Welcome to another edition of the CCS NFL Preview. I'm Nick Veronesi,
And I'm Ben Parsons.
and we are giving you a Week 11 preview of the AFC. Our first game is between the New York Jets and the Houston Texans. Ben, how do you think this game is going to play out?
I think this is a very interesting matchup because this is Ryan Fitzpatrick's first game back in Houston since he left the team. Additionally, it is TJ Yates' first start of the season. And I think defense will play a big role in this game as both teams have strong defenses, but I think the Texans' defense will prevail as they've had 11 sacks in their last two wins. I think the Texans will end up winning this game.
Very interesting prediction, Ben. But at the end, I feel like the New York Jets defense is going to be too much for a Texans offense that has never really had a good quarterback this season. And now that they have TJ Yates at the helm this week, it's definitely going to succumb to the pressure, and I think the Jets are going to win this game handily. Our second game is between the Denver Broncos and the Chicago Bears. And might I add, it is the Peyton Manning-less Denver Broncos against the Chicago Bears, as Brock Osweiler will be starting for the Broncos this week. Ben, how do you think this game is going to play out?
This is an incredibly pivotal matchup for the Denver Broncos. They're in danger of losing 3 straight, and Gary Kubiak decided to start Brock Osweiler this week. Now they're playing a Chicago Bears team that is coming in a little hot. They started off the season slow, but now they are playing a lot better. This is John Fox's first game against his old team, but I ultimately think that the Denver Broncos will win this game because of how great their defense is.
While I certainly won't ignore the fact that the Broncos have a very good defense, you can only do so much with a quarterback that has had very, very little NFL experience. And they're going up against Jay Cutler, who has been unstoppable the past few weeks. So my prediction is Jay Cutler is going to continue his role against one of the more powerful defenses in the league, and the Bears are going to pull off an upset. The final game that we will be covering is between the Buffalo Bills and the New England Patriots. This game will be played on Monday night and will be the second matchup of the season between the two AFC East rivals. Ben, how do you think this game will turn out?
This is a very intriguing matchup in Foxborough. Rex Ryan gets to play his favorite team again, and although they've lost their last 27 out of 30 games against the Patriots, they have an opportunity to defeat them this week because of the injury-riddled Patriots team. So I think Tyrod Taylor is going to have a big game, and their defense is going to step up enough to bother Tom Brady, and I think the Bills will take this one.
While I am a Patriots fan, I can see where you're going with that prediction, especially considering that last week was almost a train wreck for the New England Patriots. Almost losing to the New York Giants again, but they had to get yet another last-minute drive by Tom Brady and a 54-yard field goal by Stephen Gostkowski just to win that game. On the other hand, they were playing at home, and again, they are playing Rex Ryan, and I think they will give him fits once again. Final score, 31-27, Patriots victory. That'll do it for the AFC East preview. We will now hand it over to Chandler and Danny.
Thanks, guys. Week 11 in the NFC is shaping up to be a great week as well. As a matter of fact, let's start in Carolina with the Carolina Panthers. The undefeated Carolina Panthers are going to take on the Washington Redskins. Danny, what do you see happening in this game?
Well, I think the Panthers, obviously they're coming in 9-0 to this game. They're playing at home against a pretty mediocre Redskins team, I guess I would say. I think the Panthers defense will ultimately end up being too much for the Redskins. I think Kirk Cousins is going to have a hard time in this game. I think Cam's going to continue rolling and dancing in the end zone as he's been doing this season. And I think the Panthers will come out with a 10 or 15 point win.
Yeah, I gotta agree with you on that one. I think the Panthers are gonna win this game as well. If you look at the Washington Redskins this season, like you said, mediocre is a pretty good word to describe them. They're pretty much in the middle of the pack in pretty much every offensive category this season. Kirk Cousins, he's kind of like an up and down quarterback right now. It seems like he has a great week and then he'll have a pretty bad week. He had a great week last week, so I'm going to pick him to have a pretty bad week this week. And like I said, the Redskins, they're just a little too inconsistent for me this season. And I think the Carolina Panthers are going to get the win this week. All right, let's move things up a little bit and go to Minnesota, where the Minnesota Vikings will be taking on the Green Bay Packers, a struggling Green Bay Packers. Danny, what do you see happening in this game?
Well, like you said, the Packers have been struggling. They've lost their last 3 games. now they have to go to Minnesota and play the Vikings, who have been looking pretty good recently. However, I think that Aaron Rodgers will redeem himself and possibly throw for 250 yards in this game. I think the Packers will end up winning a close game, maybe by a touchdown or less. But yeah, I think the Packers will win this game, and I still have them winning the NFC North at the end of the year.
Okay, all right, fair enough. One thing that I found out this week that I didn't know is that the Minnesota Vikings have the 9th ranked defense in the league. I found that pretty shocking. And last week I said that Adrian Peterson was ranked 3rd in the league in rushing. He worked his way up to number 1 in the league in rushing this past week. So I think that formula, along with Teddy Bridgewater kind of maturing into being one of the best young quarterbacks in the league this season, is going to definitely make the Minnesota Vikings a competitive opponent to the Green Bay Packers. But like you said, the Green Bay Packers have lost their last 3 games, and they kind of know this is a big game, not only for their NFC North hopes, but just for their playoff hopes. They know they have to kind of win this game to stay alive in the playoff race in the NFC. So I got to agree with you. I can't go against Aaron Rodgers. He's a bad man. So I'll go with Aaron Rodgers this week. Our last game that we're going to talk about this week is a big interconference game on Sunday Night Football involving the Cincinnati Bengals and the Arizona Cardinals. Danny, what do you see transpiring in this game?
Well, like you said, this is a huge game. The Cardinals are playing on Sunday Night Football for the 2nd week in a row now, and you have the Bengals coming in off of a surprising loss to the Texans on Monday Night Football this past week. I was very puzzled at that game.
Yeah.
Andy Dalton just did not play well at all. But I think the Bengals will play a lot better in this game. However, I still think the Cardinals are going to win. I think Carson Palmer, Larry Fitzgerald, and company are just too much for the Bengals to handle.
Yeah, I got to agree with you on that one. Cincinnati, they did come off they're coming off of a big loss on Monday Night Football this past week to the Houston Texans. And like you said, Larry Fitzgerald, CJ2K, and Carson Palmer, they're kind of looking like the old school Dallas Cowboys, like I said. Carson Palmer's 4th in the league in passing. I think Chris Johnson's like 2nd in the league in rushing. Larry Fitzgerald, old man Larry, he's 5th in the league in receiving. So, yeah, I got to agree with you. I just think that those 3 will just be too much for that Cincinnati Bengals defense to handle. And I think Patrick Peterson, Tyrann Mathieu, and the rest of that Arizona Cardinals defense will just give Andy Dalton a little bit too much to handle this week. But either way, it's going to be a great week in the NFC. Let's kick it over to Dalton, who will kick things off in fantasy football this week for you.
Thanks, Chandler. There's only 3 more weeks until the fantasy football playoffs start, so these next matchups are extremely crucial. Now, a little bit of advice would be to mix up your core players. Stick some of them on the bench if their matchup isn't good. I know benching superstars is tough, but if you play the matchups, you never know. It could shake things up and give you a better chance to win. Now, I'm going to go straight into it, and my first segment I'm going to talk about is my locks of the week. My first pick is going to be Derek Carr versus the Lions. He's been absolutely on fire lately, and the Lions have the 30th ranked secondary. The next player I'm going to talk about is Brandon LaFell. He's playing Buffalo, and they have the 22nd pass defense. And what they do is they usually take away the number 1 receiver, and because Edelman's out, I think Amendola is going to take over that spot, and so Brandon LaFell will be left with a big game. The next player I want to talk about is tight end Antonio Gates. Now, I know the Chiefs are good on paper, and they actually have the best defense against tight ends. However, Antonio Gates has completely dominated them throughout his career, and so I believe in trends, so look for it to keep happening. And now I'm going to move on to my dislikes of the week. The first player I'm going to talk about is tight end Martellus Bennett. As of late, he's been losing targets to Zach Miller, and he's facing Denver, who's 10th against tight ends, so I would avoid him at all costs this week. And last, my running back to avoid this week is LaShawn McCoy. He's playing New England, who surprisingly has the 5th best running defense in the NFL, so avoid him if you can. The next segment I want to talk about is my sleepers. Now, some of these players are going to be a little bit of gambles, but it could pay off where you will. The first one I want to talk about is Eric Ebron. He's playing the Oakland Raiders, and Oakland has been atrocious against tight ends. And next, I'm going to move on to Devontae Adams. Aaron Rodgers absolutely loves this kid. He gave him 21 targets last week. That's just insane. And I know Minnesota has the 11th best pass defense, but with those targets, you just can't afford to put him on your bench. And then next, I want to move on. Now, this is definitely the biggest stretch of all. Case Keenum versus the Baltimore Ravens. The Ravens secondary is awful. And with the weapons that they have with Tavon Austin, Brian Quick, I feel like he could still get you 2 touchdowns and 300 yards. Now, it's definitely a gamble, but if you're willing to take a chance, it could pay off for you. And now I'm going to end with my DraftKings pick. The first player I want to start with is Matthew Stafford. He's facing Oakland, and he's at a really, really cheap price this week, which is $5,400. That's an absolute steal because he has really, really high upside. And what you should do is stack him with wide receiver Golden Tate. Golden Tate's only $4,600, and I know the popular play would be to implement Calvin into your lineup, but Golden Tate's a PPR star, and because DraftKings is PPR, I feel like you can get a lot of value, and then you can build a better team around him because you have two cheap core players. And then the last player I want to talk about is Charkandarick West. He's only $4,600, and he absolutely torched the Broncos last week. And this week he's playing San Diego, who has the worst run defense in the NFL. You have to play him in your lineups. I know he's going to be high owned, but you can't afford to put him on your bench. And also, he's only $4,500. DraftKings hasn't decided to update his rankings yet for whatever reason, so take advantage of this at all cost. Well, that wraps things up for us. On behalf of Capital City Sports, I'm Dalton Aho, and we'll see you next week.